Welcome to Death by a Thousand Cuts, a podcast about everything we are having to deal with in American society today. This week's topic is the Second Dark Ages through the lens of education. We are seeing a major intellectual decline. A few years ago, I was given the privilege of teaching an inner-city high school special ed class. These kids were considered disposable, and along with those who had learning disabilities, they also put the troublemakers in my class. These were the gangbangers with ankle bracelets. Furthermore, there were zero classroom resources for the children, who were also struggling at home from neglect, poverty, and hunger. How in the world could I, a white woman with only an emergency teaching certificate, ever have the skills or abilities to teach these children? But then a miracle happened. I discovered that they learned the way I did. I experienced undiagnosed dyslexia and dyscalculia, so you can imagine my struggles in school. People thought I was slow, and so I kept all my thoughts and opinions to myself. However, I learned to compensate for my learning disorders and developed coping skills that would help me make sense of information input. In 2001, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and I did it raising a 2-year-old all alone. So back to the kids. When I would explain concepts like algebra to them, they got it, they understood it, and one of my gangbangers said, "This is easy." I exposed them to the wonders of the world that they had never seen before. We discussed the images sent by the Hubble telescope and dispelled myths that they had heard about space being non-existent. I also had the dilapidated technology in the room restored, and we watched images of flying fish in the ocean on the big screen. One young lady said, "I never knew there were fish that could fly." Then I found a cart full of brand new iPads locked in a closet, and I pulled them out and assigned them to the class, because they needed to learn the technology that will affect their futures, understand it, so that they can function as adults. But unfortunately, I couldn't continue teaching because of the circumstances that teachers find themselves in today. A teacher shouldn't have to have side gigs in order to survive. A teacher should be paid a living wage and overtime for all their extra duties thrust upon them, such as before-school training assigned by the principal, who would give reading assignments and group projects to the teachers, mandatory door activities, sacrificing your planning hour or lunch to cover for another teacher due to lack of substitutes, giving up your Saturdays for mandatory training, then going home at night and grading papers from 6 classes. When I protested this ridiculous workload, the administration would laugh at me and say that I didn't understand, nor could I shoulder the normal workload upon high school teachers, as if I didn't understand what hard work was at all. I say to them now that you don't understand what teaching is, and you misunderstand the political and economic burdens you're placing upon teachers as well. But how did the system get so broken? For that, you have to go back in time. President FDR and his New Deal gave federal aid to education in order to try and get equality in educational opportunities. But the robber barons of the time were furious about FDR's social programs, which included Social Security, and from then on they made political moves to try and demolish these programs, including education. Defunding began, and over the decades more and more cuts to education occurred, including food. When Ronald Reagan cut the federal education budget, the food budget for children's lunches was slashed as well. And when questioned about the lack of nutritious food provided, he declared that ketchup was a vegetable. Children growing up in Reagan's era can attest to the horrific sugar-filled microwave meals they were given. And now, as a direct result of this fast food given to children, we have an obesity and diabetic epidemic, the likes of which the world has never seen. So, as a result of this broken system, our children are suffering as well as their teachers. We are graduating kids who don't know the difference between a nickel and a dime, who can't read or even use a calculator. And because of what I've experienced, I foresee another dark age is coming. And in fact, it's already here. Conspiracy theories and denial of science, YouTube experts with no real research to back up their claims are disseminating information based on their opinions. Kids, like those in my special ed class, are streaming out onto the streets and entering the workforce completely unprepared for the world. I only got one semester with my kids before I had to leave so that I could get a corporate job that paid the bills. I didn't get to make the impact that I hoped I would. In my mind, I had planned field trips to museums and aquariums, to the theater and the ballet, but some dreams never come true. I often wonder what became of my kids. Would the tiny spark I ignited catch fire within them, enable them to come into their own? I'll never know for certain, but I'll always wonder. I'm a teacher who can't teach for all the reasons that I've outlined above. I can't afford to take a teaching job, and I don't have the will to be overworked to the point of complete exhaustion. I want a life outside of work. Work should be a part of your life, but it's not your whole life. I think the COVID lockdown opened a generation's eyes about this truth. We all want work that is fulfilling and meaningful, no matter our abilities, perceived or actual. However, in these late stages of capitalism, and with an authoritarian figure looming, such work is perceived to be utopian in nature, socialist and lazy. And as our social systems begin to crumble, as a result of being destroyed from the inside, programs like public schools will soon collapse, and I foresee religion rising to power again and taking over these duties. Soon, only high-ranking people within the church will be able to read and access higher education. And they will determine who is worthy of it, not by merit, but by skewed interpretations of a centuries-old construct of the existence of heaven and hell. Fear of eternal damnation will once again rule human beings. I'm only one person, and since I am only one person, I haven't the power nor the influence to reverse the course of the proverbial asteroid careening towards Earth. But I hope to light a spark in my audience, and that it catches fire within them. And while I'll never know for certain, I'll always wonder. Thank you for joining me today on Death by a Thousand Cuts. I'm Liz, and I hope to see you next time.